Good to be with you. I'm Kaylem Shepherd. This is The Memo, our political hub where we come together and have pressing political conversation. Politics. It's a big word, right? Run by the same faces, the same voices, and let's be honest, the same age group. But it's time for all of that to stop. Young people are having a hard time out here. Education fees are going up. The cost of living is increasing. And let's not even start about how on earth we're going to raise a family, how we're going to... The world's just so hard for us. And it's not fair. It really isn't fair. And it's time for us to change our future. It's time for us to change the political landscape. And that starts by getting young people involved in politics. And that is what we're doing today. I'm joined by a Conservative councillor, the name Harrison Allman-Varty. Harrison was elected at the age of 18 as a Conservative councillor. Harrison, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Really appreciate your time. Let's start with this. You called, and I quote, the Lib Dems the political cockroach. Why on earth would you start your political career with such divisive language?
I wouldn't say it's that toxic.
I mean, that is quite divisive.
No, I think...
The political cockroach?
Yes, I think... and what I meant by that is, obviously, if you try to kill a cockroach, they won't die, no matter how many times you try to step on it. The reason why I said that was talking about kind of... If you're out on the doorstep and you're talking to voters, generally, it's always a swing. And that swing is from Labour or that swing is from Conservative. And that's generally based on how they perform in government. Now, it's very hard for that swing to occur with the Lib Dems because they aren't in government. And last time they were, obviously it was a disaster and there was that big swing. So it's very easy for them to say what they like and not really be held account because they're not in that position. So I think cockroach was a pretty accurate term, actually, yeah.
You are a young Conservative councillor elected at the age of 18.
That's right.
What fueled your... I believe you don't come from a political family.
Nope.
Where did this spark come from?
Well, certainly not for the pickup line. It's a good question. I actually don't know. I've always been interested in politics, and I've always been kind of invested in what's happening. I think Brexit was a key thing. I feel like everybody was involved in that, whether they wanted to or not. But in 2019, I was knocking doors for my local MP, Dominic Raab, and then they were like, you know...
a bully?
Well, not in my opinion.
No, he was...
The allegations were that he was a bully, and I think...
Do you look up to a bully?
Say again?
Do you look up to a bully?
From my relationship with Dominic, he was extremely pleasant, and he spent a lot of time with me, and probably thanks to the position I'm in now. So yeah, I actually when it first happened was I was a GCSE pupil doing GCSEs, and I bumped into a lady called Hillary. And I saw her leafleting around my local estate, and I said, oh, and she went, anyway, you don't have to be 21 anymore to run, you can be 18. Yeah. Anyway, the next day I'm in my GCSE English classroom, and I go, can you check actually Oatlands and Bowen Park to see? And she went, oh, she won. Anyway, a few years later, I'm a councillor alongside her. So the transition was very quick from just being a pupil to then being as a councillor, and yeah, it's been great.
A councillor?
Yes.
What'd you do?
Well, it's a range of, obviously, so you have different levels of local authority. You've got your borough level, which is where I sit, and then above that you have your county, and then above that, then it's kind of parliamentary. Most of what I do is planning. So things like, if someone goes in for planning applications, if it's quite controversial, that goes to a planning committee, and that's generally where I sit. And I try to have kind of an objective view on the pros and cons of that, yeah.
So let's go back to the foundations of who you are as a person.
Sure.
I believe, and I quote, you called the ECHR a red herring. Why do you not stand for an institution that believes in the right to life, the right to freedom, the right to, freedom of slavery? What's so bad about the ECHR that you just want us to leave?
I don't think the term red herring was used in a negative way. I think it was more in the term of it's misleading in the sense of that people thought leaving the European Union would solve a lot of problems. Now, as someone who I thought I agreed with leaving the EU, we found out that necessarily wasn't the answer. It means that we maybe have a bit more control, but there's no one else to blame now. So, for example, with the leaving the EU, it was a case of if we vote to leave the EU, we will then control our borders and lower immigration as we please. Now, as we've left, we've noticed that that's not been the case. Immigration has increased. Illegal immigration has increased. So the point I was trying to make is that, you know, with it being a red herring in the sense of the ECHR, I think that personally we are being sold this thing again of, oh, well, if we leave the ECHR, then we'll be able to control immigration. But you've got countries like Poland, who are members of the EU and the ECHR, and they have a very strict stance on immigration. So I personally think it's just another thing, and I think the problem is actually the people within this country trying to stop such things from happening, yeah.
So if we don't leave it, we reform it.
I personally think we're in a unique position now that we've left the EU.
What have the Conservative Party got with just leaving things? It doesn't make sense to me. We leave the EU, okay, we've left. They want to leave the ECHR. What do you want to leave next?
I think it's also a clever negotiating tool. I think if you rule leaving...
But it hasn't worked.
I think if you rule leaving something, then you don't have that negotiating power to at least try reform it. If you rule out leaving it completely, then you'll never be able to have the leverage to do what you want. I don't think... I personally think leaving would be the best option, because I think we're in a unique position now. We've left the EU to do our own British Bill of Rights. And most people...
I just don't understand. What do you not like? Do you want people to be slaves again? Do you want people to not have an education? These are things that the ECHR stands for, and this is something that you claim not to stand for.
No, I agree with all the... Of course, I agree with all the merits that come with the ECHR. I just think that I personally don't think that a European court should control what, for example, the British majority voted for. The British majority electorate voted, obviously, for a Conservative government in 2019
on election of misinformation.
No, on a mandate.
No, it was not. Let's be honest here.
In 2019,
that campaign about Brexit was lies.
Go on, expand.
Do you agree?
No, go on, expand.
All the money going towards the NHS.
Well,
that's one example.
That wasn't the general election. That was the referendum.
Well, do you think Brexit was a lie? Do you think it was misleading?
There was from both sides. Yeah, there was misleading. Yeah.
So leaving the ECHR, what's that going to achieve? We've seen Brexit hasn't worked.
No, I don't think that's true. I personally think that I'm very critical of my own party and when they were in government, and I completely agree in the sense of we haven't taken advantage of the benefits of Brexit. For example, one of the benefits that it could have been is now we left the EU, we could have sat down with all the big finance bosses in the city and said, look, we're in a unique position now. We're in Europe, but we're not in the EU. What was it that was about the EU that, there's, for example, red tape that got in the way of doing your business? What made it hard to do? What can we cut and what can we do? How can we be agile and nimble as a country to kind of make ourselves the best place and take the best bits out of the EU and the best bits out of other places in the world and make it really the best place? We haven't done that. That is a failure of my party, and I think some people would admit that as well.
Starmer's obviously weighing up what he does next when it comes to negotiations with a trade deal. Is he going to go with the United States? Is he going to stick with the EU? What do you think he should do?
I don't think it's binary, to be honest. You could probably do both. I think the United States probably has larger scope. I think if he plays his cards right, he could probably get a very good deal from the US. He's not started it. No one. I don't think anybody would say he's had a good start with how he's done it. I think it's sixth form politics. Him and David Lammy with how they've gone about it. But
I think some would argue better than what the Conservatives did.
How come?
Well, let's talk about the last 14 years of damage, some people would say.
You see, I don't agree with...
They've just started. Give them a break.
I don't agree with it when people say last 14 years, because it's not 14 years, though, is it?
But it's obviously the leaders have changed.
It's the last 5 years, if anybody was going to say that, because in 2019, they got their most amount of votes that they ever got.
Correct.
So I guess if it was 14 years, then they would have stopped voting them from 2010.
Yeah, because the leaders changed, though. It was still the same party.
Still the same party, but it's still... But, you can't kind of pick and choose. I think...
we can.
I think it's a case of that at least the Conservatives spoke a good game about Donald Trump. But that being said, there are obviously some people like William Hague who are very outspoken about his dislike towards Trump. It's just not wise. It's just stupid. Why? Regardless, look, if I've got strong political opinions about someone... and I wanted to do a business deal with them, I wouldn't take to Twitter and say about how stupid their views are, because that's stupid, and I'd get sacked.
But you do call people cockroaches.
No, I called a party a cockroach as a kind of a metaphor. But never personal insults.
No personal insults. No. So, what MPs do you look up to?
Singular MPs is quite a difficult one.
Dominic Raab?
Dominic Raab obviously was my local MP, and I spent time with him, and he was very fortunate for the time he gave to me. We've got a new MP now, Monica Harding. So she's the first woman and first Lib Dem member of Parliament. So I don't really agree with her politically, but she's a very nice lady, and obviously she's a bit of a milestone for our constituency, being the first woman. But single, I mean, to be fair, Rishi Sunak was probably a good MP to look up to because he obviously was elected in 2015. I think that's right. And from that, he rose up the ranks exceptionally well. So I think probably Rishi Sunak is a bit of a star MP in the case of how quickly you can progress.
David Cameron?
Yeah, David Cameron was a good prime minister. But lost control, really, at the end, didn't he? So, kind of tarnished things.
I mean, talking about prime ministers, who was the worst Conservative prime minister we had?
Probably Theresa May.
Why?
Because she failed to grasp genuine opportunities, and she lacked proper leadership when the country needed it most.
Hold on. I'm surprised you didn't say Liz Truss.
I mean, Liz Truss...
Do you support her economic plan?
Liz Truss did enormous damage to the party's reputation, of course. I think the ideas were on the right track. I think the execution was poor.
What kind of Conservative would you call yourself?
A traditional Conservative.
What does that mean?
I'm a capitalist. I believe in small business and low taxes and small state and family values. I guess what Conservatives used to be, really.
You sound like a Conservative. I can see you running the Conservative Party one day.
Not sure that's a compliment to some people.
I mean, is that something that is in mind? You're not going to stick as a local councillor, let's be honest.
I personally wouldn't want to go any higher unless I've achieved something a bit more outside of politics. I wouldn't want to be like a lot of Labour MPs, just to be a politician, right? And a bit like Theresa May, to kind of be balanced. She was obviously a career politician. So I'd quite like to accomplish something, whether that's in industry, whether that's setting my own business up, or whatever it may be. So then if I do go higher up into politics, I'll be able to go, look, sure, I've got a bit of a background in what I did in local government, but also this is kind of my main profession. This is what I know. This is what I'm good at, and this is what I can bring to the table.
What's your thoughts on let's talk about the Labour Party. What's your thoughts on the Labour Party increasing university fees?
I don't think it's surprising. I think anybody who voted...
I think it's quite a joke. I would say, I think it's honestly quite a joke.
I think anybody who voted, any young person who voted Labour on the hope that might happen has been massively mugged off. But then again, I'm not surprised. There is a list as long as your arm with the amount of things that Keir Starmer has promised on and reneged on. That's me talking as, I am far from being left-wing, but I know lots of people who are left-wing who are very frustrated at Keir Starmer because they thought this is our opportunity to finally have this reset, and be in government and kind of go back on all the core principles of what it means to be kind of left-wing or be Labour Party. Don't get me wrong, they still are left-wing. But yeah, no, I can certainly see why people are frustrated. Yeah.
Elected as a councillor at the age of 18.
Yep.
Do you think young people should be able to vote at 16?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't. I just don't think
Because I don't? What do you mean?
Because I don't. I just don't think that... I think that a person at 16 is still forming their opinion.
But you said that you got politically active very young.
Yeah.
How
And yeah, I mean, to be fair, would I have voted the same as I was 16? Probably. But...
Or is it just because young people don't typically vote Tory, so you just want to keep them to the side?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the argument is a lot of the kind of the Gen Z that's coming through now, the second most popular party behind Labour is the likes of Reform UK. So there is obviously something happening where young people are turning towards not the stereotypical look. Then again, obviously Labour would seek to benefit from it the most, you're right. But no, I don't think that's it. I think it's... I think 18 is probably about right where it needs to be, yeah.
Politics is, some would argue, an old man's game.
Right.
Do you think we need younger politicians in Parliament? People like yourself?
It's a tricky one because the natural answer is to say yes, right? Now, when people say, "Oh, it's something so unusual to be so young to go into politics," like, and it is, you know, the age that I am, the average age profile for a councillor, I think, is about 66, right? But there actually isn't that much hunger, I don't think, in young people to actually want to do it. I don't think that many young people want to be a local councillor. I don't think that many young people want to be an MP. You know, the latest stat coming, when you ask children what you want to be when you're older, only about 4% say Prime Minister now. So it's all right saying...
Were you one of those 4%?
It's all right saying...
I know.
I wouldn't want to... I don't know. I don't, you know, like I said, I'd quite like to be successful in business, whatever that may be. And if that means later down the line there's an opportunity, then who knows? But I think, I'll be honest, I think by saying to get more people in politics, it's okay, but people shouldn't be in politics just because they're young. Like, I didn't get selected because I said, "Oh, I'm young, vote me. Vote for me."
But so many people would argue that the older generation don't relate to the problems that we are facing right now with, you know, do you have a house? Do you own a house?
No.
No. Most people were not able to afford a house. So what do you say to that? Young people know about the issues that young people are facing. So let's get more young people in Parliament to deal with those issues.
I would say run. If you are a young person and you genuinely have those frustrations, run. Honestly, the time has never been better to be a young person going to
I feel like that's just a push to the side, though. You're like, just
no,
run,
it's not.
Just run.
If you're I would say if you're a straight white old male, the time for you to go into politics is not now. Because we are in a time where everybody is talking about we need diverse backgrounds, we need young people. So what I would say is, if you're a young person and you've got these, stop moaning and go for it. You know, it's all right kind of hiding behind the keyboard, going on Twitter and then this is wrong and this is wrong. It's no good. Like I said, if you actually sat down with someone and said, okay, then run to be an MP, they wouldn't want to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I think put your money where your mouth is if you've got a real problem. But otherwise, obviously, it's important for a local MP to keep the communication channel open so young people can obviously feedback exactly what they're feeling.
You're a local councillor.
Yeah.
Do they make much money?
No, you don't get paid, you get an allowance.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not much at all.
So do you think there's another conversation about politicians? You know, some argue that the salary isn't enough. Some argue the salary is too much. What do you say?
Salary should definitely be higher. Yeah, I think the Prime Minister should be at least £1 million a year.
£1 million a year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why £1 million a year?
It should attract the very best. And okay, let's put it like this: if you're a very successful businessman, and you're earning, you know, a couple million a year, a few million a year, who knows? They might think, you know what? Actually, I know exactly what this country needs because of my skill set and because of my talent, because I'm paid so much. I think I would run but for the stress that it comes with, for the lifestyle the changes that it comes with, and to take a pay cut, it's no longer worth it for me. You know, so I personally don't. You know, lots of positions get paid more than the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister gets paid what, £160,000 a year. Sure, it's a good salary, yeah. But for the job, I mean, the job will never end. You'll never get your weekends off. You'll never really get your evenings.
But you're always going to have a career. You're always going to be making money from speaking engagements.
Sure, I guess, yeah. I mean, of course, but I guess your question was more about the payment itself from being a politician. And I think if you want to attract the best type of people, you should pay them the best. But that means our standards should also be just as high.
So no bullies in the Conservative Party.
I think, look, standards should be high across
no
Parliament.
Sex pests.
Of course. I mean, what am I going to say? Yes.
No, of course not. Yeah.
So no. I think across Parliament, standards should be high. You can't have Labour MPs on the street punching people. You know, it's just unacceptable. So standards should be high across the board, and that should be reflected in their pay.
What did your friends say to you when you decided to be a councillor? You're insane.
Yes.
Have fun.
You should ask them.
I'm asking you. They're not here to say.
I didn't. To be honest, I don't really talk politics that much with my mates because it's not exactly an exciting.
What do you talk about? Football?
Yeah, football. I mean, it's not exactly exciting. But I don't know. I think they probably thought I wasn't going to do something too conventional. But in fairness, you know, they were out helping me on the doorstep. They helped me get my leaflets out. So they were supportive.
Are your parents proud?
I hope so. Yeah, they say they are. So yeah.
What's the future look like for you? I know we kind of discussed it before, but I really don't believe that you decided that you want to be a councillor and you're going to step away from it. You like this life. It's good.
Well, it's all right. I mean,
I mean, you're here in the studio now. Of course, it's good.
Sure, but obviously I'm not doing it for the pay. I'm certainly not doing it for the praise, because anyone who thinks they're going to politics to get pats on the back is absolutely completely wrong. So
you really do care about the average person. You care about the people.
I do. No, I genuinely do think that people should go into politics because they think they can do something better. They think that they have a better idea and can bring positive change. Absolutely, whether you're left or right.
So what ideas are you bringing to the table?
What do I bring? I think for me, the area that I represent, I've lived in my whole life. So I guess the whole experience thing was, I've lived in there at the time was 18 years, which was more than the people who would challenge me for the seat. I think, although we touched on the young thing, it's definitely helpful to have a young perspective on things, because the experiences I've had as a younger person are obviously slightly different, and I can contrast those against the others. But things like, for example, planning. Planning's a big thing, and I generally try to take an optimistic view to planning, where people like to say no to a lot of things, and I think I always try to see the merits within planning and what investment can bring. So that's kind of a little snapshot, really, of the change I try to bring locally. Is I try to welcome as much investment as I can.
You went to an independent school.
Sure.
Do you think politics is a elitist game?
No. Angela Rayner was at PMQ today, and I think, someone like that, although I don't agree with her politics, I think she's got a great story to tell, from her background to where she is now.
But we need people like that in politics.
Sure,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, sure. I think, like I said, a contrast of everybody from different backgrounds and different socio-economic backgrounds is a healthy thing. Do I think it's an elitist game? It was, of course it was, but not anymore.
You didn't go to university, did you?
No.
No. How comes?
I was never really interested, really, to be honest. I left and I just went straight into work. I personally think, obviously, most of my mates went. They have a lot of time on their hands, and I thought I'd like to keep myself busy, so it probably wasn't for me. Yeah.
What would your advice be to Sekia Starmer now trying to get young people into politics?
Make it interesting. He's so boring. And I think just make it more fun. And I know people say, I think there is no personality in him. You look at characters like Nigel Farage and Angela Rayner, right? They are obviously completely different politically, but they're interesting, right? You genuinely want to listen to what they have to say, because you might not know what they say.
Yeah.
So I would say to someone like yourself, if you really want to get the interest, you're not going to get it from some person saying you should be interested in politics, you should do it. You should get it by just making it interesting and make them want to do it off their own back instead.
Trump now in the White House.
Yep.
Good for us, good for the USA.
It's great news for us. Absolutely great news. I think people who have any kind of interest...
A convicted felon's good for the world.
I think anybody who actually follows politics knows that Joe Biden was just no good for this country. It's another failure, really, I guess, of Theresa May's. When Trump was in, there was a unique opportunity to seize a free trade agreement, and they were too busy banging on about how we can still align with the European Union. I think Trump will provide us with a great opportunity. He's likely to tariff large trading blocs like the EU, like big countries like China. But I think if we have a good relationship with him, I think we might benefit from that.
What was your thoughts on Kamala Harris?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't think the average Brit could tell you. Half the time you watch her, she's clapping and pointing at the crowd and smiling, and you think, what are you saying? Give us some substance.
Yeah. I think that was the real kind of the reasons why the Democrats lost, is because, she was this fun auntie on TikTok, but who really was she? Exactly.
I think we never really got to see who she was. Perhaps if we did, she would have done better. But I'll be honest, my knowledge of the US politics is nowhere near as good as here. Look, I'm sure she's a nice person. I'm sure she was well intended, but I just think whoever's managing her campaign needs to be sacked.
Okay, let's talk about issues that young people care about. Climate change. Do you believe in it?
I think it's exaggerated.
I mean, the question was, do you believe in it?
Look, there's no doubt the climate's changing. it's the question of how much impact do humans have on that, right? And every person at school is taught about, you know, the climate has changed for thousands and millions of years, and they can tell that through rocks and through ice. And it's been more extreme, and it's been less extreme. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm not denying that, of course, humans have an impact on climate, a negative impact, but it is also a natural cycle for temperatures to increase and decrease, as every child is taught at school.
So you believe in climate change?
Yeah, I do.
And do you think we should invest more into climate change prevention?
That's an interesting question. You've said climate change prevention, so you're thinking of like sea defences and stuff like that, rather than investing into green technologies itself. Definitely. Of course, I think that's exactly what you should be doing. I think you should be investing more in prevention than you should be actually more in the climate itself. This country has made enormous efforts to decarbonise. I think foolishly. I think, don't get me wrong, it's impressive how quickly we've moved. But when you see, for example, power stations being turned off, not only do we not turn them off, we blow them up. Yeah. And I don't think that's particularly wise, because especially in the world we live in where it's so risky, we think, okay, well, what could happen down the line? What happens if, let's say, Putin wanted to be a bit more aggressive and energy is much more, you know, in a fragile state, we can't borrow energy from the continent. It might be a case of might need to turn that power station on and burn coal. So yes, I do believe in climate change. Yes, I do think we've made good steps to do that. But I do think that it's a balanced approach of we shouldn't hurt the poorest in this country, so just race there when we emit less than 1% of emissions.
What do you think about organisations like Just Stop Oil?
I personally think they are great for the fossil fuel companies.
Expand?
Because they turn people off the idea of wanting to be green so much that they don't realise that the average person is who they need to attract to their argument, not frustrate. And I think their methods were so widely condemned across every kind of area. I personally think that they've done massive harm to the climate debate, and they just think that people who can't debate and just have to sit in the middle of a road, when there is a lot of debate to have, and it's it's very balanced as well. It's like, okay, well, how do you want to achieve that? Does that mean applying more levies? Does that mean hurting people who are even poorer? So I just think they're too extreme. I think there's a balanced approach, and I think it's a common sense approach, really.
Yeah. I love that word, common sense.
Common sense. Yeah.
Common sense. Such a
not
Tory,
very common.
Not very common. Such a Tory thing to say as well. Common sense approach. Harrison, tell me, what does life look like for you at the moment? What's the day in the life of Harrison look like?
I work. I'm constantly watching the news. I know that's
What's
so
your go-to news channel?
Probably Sky. And then I like the likes of. To be fair, I'll probably watch James O'Brien on LBC to see how long I can last before I have to turn him off. And then
I've seen your tweets about him.
Yeah, no good.
Yeah.
Although he's very.
Has anybody got a mug?
Yeah, he's very intelligent. I'll give him that. But I think he's quite condescending. But to be fair, I watch all sorts of news channels. I watch Channel 4, I watch LBC, I watch GB News. And honestly, that's the only thing I would say is if you want to form an opinion, watch everything. Like, watch right-leaning stuff, watch left-leaning stuff, watch stuff in the middle. Like, that is the only way you'll get your opinion. Because if you only watch GB News, if you only listen to James O'Brien, once you then get challenged on your opinion, you'll fall short because you realise that it wasn't your opinion. It was just from what you've heard. So that's I'd say a good piece of advice.
Yeah. So what does a youth parliament look like to you? A youth-led parliament? Is that something you would like to see?
No. Because experience is a good thing. And if it's...
What experience do you have? You're a councillor.
Sure. I mean...
You're 18 elected.
Yeah. I mean, what you said there is a youth parliament. So you're basically saying that every single person in parliament is a young person. Now, in the council, the average age profile is older. Now, as a younger person, I would say then, yeah, I do have a bit of a selling point there because I could maybe talk to people and be like, okay, well, this is actually how young people feel, kind of thing. If you had just young people in there, they would then be out of touch, for example, what pensioners want. So I think that's a stupid idea, and I think, like I said before, you need a parliament that represents everybody, poor and rich, you kind of disadvantaged and not, and everything, because everybody needs a voice in there. Yeah.
And are you the voice of young people?
I can claim to be. I think because a lot of young people won't share my viewpoints, most likely will vote Labour. So I wouldn't claim to be the voice of young people. I don't think that's fair. I maybe claim to be the voice of young people who are more inclined to vote for like a right-wing party, maybe. But not for all young people, no.
Where did you get your political ideals from?
I don't know. I honestly, like I said, I've
Didn't grow up in a political family.
No. My parents have always ever voted for a party which they thought was the least worst. So
it must stem from somewhere.
No, I mean honestly, it's genuine interest. I wanted to do politics at school for A levels, and they said you can't because you didn't meet the academic threshold. I got 3 Bs at A level. And then the following year, the school invited me to talk to their politics students. I thought there was a sense of irony there a little bit. But honestly, no, it's perhaps maybe that's a good thing because perhaps maybe separating studying and focusing on it maybe as a full-time job means that I enjoy it as a side thing, as a kind of a hobby, as something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I personally think people who study politics and go into politics, no, I don't agree with that. I think, look, whoever you are, go do what you want to do. Go set up a business.
Yeah.
And be. I don't think you should study politics and be in politics.
Running out of time.
Sure.
A few quick questions. Do you think the Tories will be back in power anytime soon?
Yeah. I think the polls have already reflected an uptick. I think if Labour keep going as they are, it will be easier than ever. So yeah.
Keir Starmer, yay or nay?
No.
Wow.
No, because I think he's tone deaf to what real people want and what change. People voted for change, but they found out that it's the worst change, not good change.
Do you think Angela Rayner would be better as a leader?
As a leader, potentially, yeah. She's more left-wing than Keir Starmer, so politically that would be the wrong decision for me. But I think she'd be a better leader.
Yeah.
I think she's got conviction. I think she's got a good story to tell. I think she's charismatic.
Yeah.
I think people, regardless of their politics, would actually quite like her.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, I think she would be a better leader.
Okay. I want to do one more thing before we go. I want you to look into the camera
Yeah.
and tell young people why they should get involved in politics.
I think if you are frustrated at whatever it may be, don't just be another one of those annoying people online moaning. Like, genuinely, the time has never been better to go in and do something yourself. So honestly, I know you think it's stupid, but go and do it. Go and go for that change. Yeah.
Harrison, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the Memo.
Thanks.
And thank you guys for listening and watching. The Memo's back next week. Remember, the conversation continues. It's important. Your voice, your opinion matters. Stay involved with the conversation. Memo's back next week. See you soon.